Okay. I want to say thank you to our guest today, Miss Diane Drake. Thank you so much for being here and sharing time with us. Um, I'm wondering, since we touched on it on our intro conversation, how have you dealt with the whole COVID quarantine situation?
I mean, in some ways it's not that different for me in a way. I mean, I work out of my home. I've done that for many, many, many years. I'm self-employed. So I'm fortunate in that way, but it's isolating, obviously. And for me, and I have to preface this by saying, I am well aware that I'm very fortunate that this is like my biggest problem, but I really do like to travel. And I was supposed to do a couple writing retreats in Europe, one in the spring in Italy and one in the fall in France, and those both got canceled. Just some other trips, and realizing that not only is that not happening, but who knows when it will. It's nice to have those things to look forward to, and they're just very, vacation's inspiring, and those two things are actually sort of a working vacation, but I travel in between, and yeah. So, but again, if that's my biggest problem, I'm very fortunate. So yeah.
No, thank God. Yeah, I can totally relate. Artists being home is kind of a staple to begin with. Yeah.
I will say, I have to brag about this because I just did this last night for the second time. I have learned how to bake sourdough, and I know that I am, way late to that party, but I am really proud of it because it was a little daunting to me, and it turned out really well. So yeah, I could send you photos.
Oh, that's awesome. A woman of many, many talents. Yeah, no, I'd love to dive right in because I absolutely adore Only You.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, I would love to know what inspired that piece for you. When did you begin working on it? Everything.
Oh, goodness. Okay, let's see. Well, I don't know how far back to go. Before I started writing, I worked for Sidney Pollack, the director. I was a VP for him. And that was a really great job in a lot of ways. But as happens in Hollywood, a woman came in to run the company, and she really made my life hell. She really did, and pushed me out of there. And that was really scary. I didn't have anything to fall back on. I didn't have, family in the business or anything like that. So I figured the one thing they couldn't take from me was what I'd learned. And I thought, I'd spent so much time analyzing other people's material at a pretty high level by that point. And I just sort of felt like, well, if you know so much, what's stopping you from trying this? But it was confidence was really what was stopping me. It was a really great time to sell a spec script. So that kind of, gave me hope. But it's one thing to be a critic. It's another thing to face the blank page. And particularly when you've spent a lot of time kind of honing your critical skills, but your creative skills are not, to a level, as I've said in other interviews, it's like I had to accept the fact that my writing was probably not going to be at a level that I would really admire or appreciate. Right?
Wow.
It's just starting as a writer in a way. So anyway, I knew the writing was on the wall there, and I knew I had to get out of there, and I knew I probably couldn't do that job anywhere else. So I wrote my first script at night while I was still working there in 3 months, which astonishes me in hindsight because it was a really demanding job, and I spent 2 hours on the freeway every day. But anyway,
wow.
Desperate times, desperate measures, right? And
yeah, yeah.
That was just a silly talking animal movie. I think it was just an escape for me. And it didn't sell, but I did get an agent, got a very small agent out of it. And God bless him. I mean, like the stars really did align for me because when I look back, it was all sort of miraculous. Like he got me one meeting off that script and I got the job. It was to write a treatment. Yeah, it was to write a treatment for a company called Hanna-Barbera, which used to do cartoons, and they were moving into live action. I don't think they're around anymore. But anyway, so that got me, it paid $25,000. It was Writers Guild. They were Writers Guild signatory. which to me was a lot of money at the time, even though I had to pay my agent and my lawyer and the taxes and everything. You know, it was something. It was something, and
Sure.
also allowed me to hold my head up and say, you know, like, I'm a writer. And it got me health insurance, which was key for a year. And that bought me the time to write Only You. And Only You was, I mean, loosely based. I mean, I was a kid who played with Ouija boards. You know, if you were of my era, you kind of did. It wasn't, we didn't think of it as anything scary. It was just as there used to be a line in the script, which I don't think there is anymore, but at one point somebody gets freaked out about it. And you know, I think it's Faith. Somebody says, it's a Parker Brothers game, you know? So anyway, and that was a question we used to ask. And then the other real inspiration for that was I had been to Europe for the first time the year before, and I had traveled a few different countries, and Italy was really my favorite. And I just really loved it, and I really wanted to go back. And so when I came up with the idea, I thought, you know, I had to send her somewhere, you know, like she's somewhere. So I decided to make it Italy. And, you know, mainly because I wanted to go there, and because I wanted to go to there, as Tina Fey would say. And you know, it was like an escape. Again, like I was unemployed. I was living in this crappy little apartment in West LA. My best friend had just moved to Africa. You know, I mean, it was just kind of a hard time. So to have that mental escape, you know, was so much fun for me, because writing's hard. Anybody who's done it at all understands that. And so that made it fun for me, the dreaming of going to these places. And like, I don't know if you remember in the movie, but when I had gone to Italy, the first time I'd been to Florence, I'd been to Rome, but I didn't go to Positano, but I had read about Positano, and I wanted to go to Positano. I didn't go to Positano. They go to Positano because I wanted to go to Positano. But I was also really inspired at the time by, there were around that time, there were a number of indie movies set in Italy but I felt then, you hadn't seen it on the big screen in like a studio movie in a long time. Like there was Cinema Paradiso, there was Enchanted April, which I loved. Il Postino, I think, came a little bit later, but, you know, just kind of showing off the landscape in such a charming, you know, it's just so beautiful. But you hadn't seen it on the big screen. I mean, this is before, you know, Under the Tuscan Sun and some of the other movies that I think got made, but not that, you know, mine led the way or anything, but it just hadn't been done in a while, I felt. So that was another fun thing about it. But one last thing on that topic, and I've told this story a million times, but I just think it's important. I had a really good friend who, he had worked at HBO when I had worked for Sydney, and we both kind of lost our jobs at about the same time, and we both were trying to write. And he was a script ahead of me. He was working on his third script, and I was working on my second when I was writing Only You. And I really respected his work and his talent. I remember saying to people, like, if I had to bet on anybody, I would bet on him. And so he read my script. I was struggling. I was kind of lost at one point. And he was very cocky, and he was like, send it to me. I'll read it. We'll have brunch. I'll help you, you know, fix the story problems. Like no big deal. Right. And I was happy to have any help I could get, particularly from somebody whose work I really respected. So I did that, and he read it, and we met, and he gave me amazing notes, like really things that I think saved it. And I knew it was going to mean I was going to have to rip the whole thing apart, but I really felt like it would be worth it. I just thought, yes, that'll work. I can make that work. But he also said, but don't set it in Italy. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, why not set it in Italy? I think that's fun. And he's like, nah, if you set it in Italy, it just becomes a movie about Italy. And I knew he was wrong. I knew he was wrong about that. I felt like he was right about the other stuff, but he was wrong about that. And truly, I think that is one of the better things about the movie. You know, I think it's done really, really well. That it wasn't a big hit at the time. It was respected. It did all right at the box office, but it's done really, really well in like, you know, DVD and all that. And I think that's part of it. I mean, obviously it's Robert, who's amazing, but it's also just kind of a fun little, you know, escape, as it was for me when I was writing it. So yeah, you know, so there's, you know, there's something for you. Like, take the notes that resonate, that you feel are really useful, but you don't have to take all of them.
Right. Trust your own instincts at the end of the day as well.
Right.
And push for your vision.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I also love, that you candidly share, I want to go to Italy. Because I think, making a movie is a lot of work. And if that little push is that extra incentive to keep that passion, igniting in you to go and do it, why not?
It's true. I mean, however you can incentivize yourself. I mean, I will say I did go to Italy when they were shooting, but that's unusual, especially for a first-time writer. And really the only reason that I was able to do that was because it was such a big spec sale. I don't know if you know, but it sold like for $1 million. So
wow.
it was a bidding war, and mainly because Demi Moore wanted it at the time, and Julia Roberts' agent wanted it for her, and then obviously neither of them wound up doing it. But that gave my agent a lot of leverage. So, and it was a different era, and scripts were selling for that kind of money back in the day. Not that often for that amount, but they were selling. So I had this little tiny window of opportunity where I remember my agent and my lawyer saying to me, "Is there anything else you want? In this deal, like basically this is your opportunity, speak now." And I said, "Well, do I get to go to Italy?" That was like the big, they're $1 million. I'm like, "Do I get to go to Italy?" And they're like, "Well, do you want to go to Italy?" Like, yeah, I think I do. They had to send me. That's another story. But anyway, they had to.
Well, I just think that's so breathtaking. Like, so you write the script, you get the bidding war going, and you get names coming in like Robert Downey Jr., Julia Roberts.
Well, he came later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just,
no, I mean, and I was no one had ever heard of me. I hadn't sold anything. It was different then,
wow.
My agent at a fairly small agency could get it to all those people and get them to read it in, a couple of days. And it all happened very, very quickly. Yeah, it was a different era, really.
That's amazing. Yeah, I connect with that story so much just because I've always been a fan of the destiny versus free will question. So I just loved how you blurred that line constantly. I just thought it was magical. So yeah.
Aw, thank you.
I'm sorry to keep gushing over.
The moral to the story was meant to be what the fortune teller tells in the beginning, and I don't know if people got that or not, but where she says, "The truth is you make your own destiny. Don't wait for it to come to you." I mean, I think that's something I was kind of wrestling with myself at the time, right? Like having lost my job and what am I going to do? And all right, it's up to me. Like no one's coming to save me. I'm going to have to figure this out. And I also think, I teach writing quite a bit now. And one of the things I like about it is I learn stuff myself, even after all these time, I still learn things. And one of the things I realized, it's a few years ago now, but that I think kind of the underlying moral to pretty much every story, maybe not every story, but 95%, what stories are teaching us as a whole is that what matters most in life isn't what happens to you, but what you do about it.
Beautiful. Yeah, definitely.
I really think that's it.
Yeah.
Like a character, something happens to them. What are they going to do about it? Because life's not fair. It's just not.
Yeah.
And shit's going to happen. So I think that's what stories are trying to teach us,
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. And of course, then came your other huge success.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how much I want to get into that. That was a bittersweet experience. Very bitter, somewhat sweet. The movie got made. My name is on it. I conceived of it. I wrote the first script. There were lots of not nice things that were done to me. As a result, yeah. And that's about all I'm allowed to say.
Okay.
Sadly, or maybe for the best. I don't know. But I'm kind of writing about that now. So in a
fabulous.
cleft way. I'm trying to take inspiration from Nora Ephron and her.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like take the really shitty things that happen to you again, and see if I can turn it into something amusing.
Yeah. May I ask, did you want to make the female version of it?
No, that was not, no. I mean, I don't care. They paid me. I had nothing to do with it. It doesn't make sense, though. The female version just doesn't make sense, you know? I mean, I don't know if this came across at all, but I've been thinking about this a lot lately in the wake of everything that's going on in the world right now. What that movie, thematically, what that script was about, to me, was about empathy. And how do you instill it in someone who seems devoid of it? That's what it was about.
Yeah.
And there was a scene in my draft where I kind of, I'll call it an homage. I did an homage to a scene in Wings of Desire. I don't know if you know that film, a German film, brilliant German film.
I'll check it out.
Angel. It's really interesting. It's set in Berlin. Anyway, there's this angel who just looks like an ordinary guy, right? But he's got this amazingly expressive face. It's just fascinating. Anyway, and he moves through the city and he hears people's thoughts and prayers, right? And so I had a scene in a church where Mel's character, kind of to get out of wherever he was or something, sort of darts into a church and then becomes sort of overwhelmed hearing the prayers of, like, you know, the teenage girl and the old lady and, you know, and just the struggles that people are facing, that women, because that's whose thoughts you can hear, you know, which is so funny to me in a way. It's like, if I do say so myself, it's a really clever idea and people thought it was a really clever idea, but it's funny how you're really just taking something away, right? You're not saying he's a mind reader, because that's sort of like whatever. He's a man who can read women's minds, right? Like if you can read everybody's mind, it's sort of not the same. Anyway, what was I?
Yeah, no, I see your point. The more vulnerable section of the population.
Right, and also men, women, and the whole, you can play with that, have fun with that. But in terms of getting back to your question about the remake, so that to me was what it was about. I did not put a lot of lines in there that were like, which are in the film, like, oh, I looked at his crotch, you know. People enjoyed them, so that's fine. But I mean, mine was a comedy, don't get me wrong. It absolutely was, and a lot of it was very silly. But it did have that sort of more, for me, serious underpinning, right, that I was exploring. And I don't think the remake does that at all. You know, like the original, he's an idiot, and then he becomes less of an idiot, right, by virtue of gaining empathy. In the remake, and I haven't even seen it, I'll be honest, I did read it. I had to read it in order to get the meager credit I got from the Writers Guild, and make my case. But she's an idiot, and the guys are idiots. So I don't know.
Growth, yeah.
But you know what? I'd cash the check.
That's fine.
Be my guest. It has been remade in China.
Powerhouse. I so admire you.
Pardon me?
You're such a powerhouse. I so admire you. Just your tenacity to keep going through all these struggles, you know, aside from your creativity, I applaud you for.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I mean, I don't mean to be like wham, 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 because I've been really fortunate. Fortunate. That's just what I always say to people when, like, they tell me, oh, their daughter wants to be or their son or whoever wants to be a screenwriter. And I'm just like, it's kind of brutal, you know? And I say, I've gotten away with it. That's how I look at it. I've gotten away with it. You know, I had good timing. I worked really hard. And the movie God smiled on me, right? A few times. But there's no given that will happen. Right. And even so, you know, I mean, it comes at a cost. I'm just saying. But it's also, I mean, I don't want to be too, because
no, I understand.
You know, it's a great, I mean, I got to go to Italy and hang out with Robert Downey. I mean, come on. And I've been able to live my life in the way I chose, right? Like, I've had a lot of freedom but that was because I got paid so much a few times. I've had an odd career. I've only sold a few things, but they keep getting remade. And I got paid a lot when they sold, and then only when one been remade in China, and I actually got paid well on that, which is very unusual. It was just kind of unusual circumstance in both cases that they actually did pay me and not just steal it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, that's, there's so much there. It's, the tenacity that people has to have as a screenwriter, knowing that it does come at a cost, to always be watching your back. I mean, I know for me, my thing is always like, they'll say, send me a writing sample or send me a script. And that's always in the back of my head. Like, they just gonna like change the names and, there's a lot.
I mean, I used to say, I do more speaking now, but after Only You, I did just a few things, minimally, some college and asked me or something. And excuse me, I'd always get that question. And I used to say, well, it's just easier for them to pay you than steal it, really. And excuse me. Obviously, in my case, I did have an agent and a lawyer, and I was in the guild and everything. But it has happened to me, and yeah. And it's. I will tell you this. I'll say this much. I think the people you have to watch out for the most are your fellow creatives.
Ooh.
I think they're the ones, because for a studio, whatever, they don't care. They'll pay you off, shut you up, replace you, go away. They'd rather just do that and be in the clear.
Right.
It's other people who want to put their name on your work. That's hard. And if they're more powerful than you, it's even harder.
Wow, gave me the chills. And it's not easier.
You didn't realize we were going to veer from rom-com into horror.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no. But again, that's one of the reasons why I love that movie, is because I think it's so layered. Your characters are so layered. It's not predictable, so that's what really, connect, aside from I'm Italian and I think Italy is gorgeous.
Yeah. No, you kind of can't beat it. Again, getting back to where we started, this trip I was supposed to take to Italy in April would have been my first trip back there in a very long time. I've been there, fortunate enough to go a few times, but I've not been in a very long time. And I've got some friends in Rome now, and I was just, I was so looking forward to it. It was supposed to be down in Naples on Ischia, the island of Ischia. It's now scheduled for next April, but anyway.
It'll come. That idea, that's really interesting. How did your writing retreats come about? What inspired that for you?
Well, it's actually through a really good friend of mine, Jen Grisanti, who's a wonderful, you should interview her if you've not. She works primarily in TV, but I'm sure you do both. But anyway, and she does features too, but she's a consultant. She's been executive for CBS Paramount. Anyway, she's a really good friend of mine, and she's an amazing, amazing consultant and has a really thriving business doing that. So she was invited, I guess it's 3 years ago now, I think, by a woman who organizes these retreats, a woman out of Spain, and did one in Spain. And then she started doing them at this castle in France the following year. Wow. Oh, yeah, it's so cool. It's Miles Brooklyn. I don't know if you know who that is. He's a music producer. Anyway, it's his castle. And so through Jen, this woman whose name's Claire, it's called Rockaberti, by the way. I always forget it's called Rockaberti. And it's amazing. It's just an amazing experience. So anyway, Claire, who organizes it, Claire Terry, asked, Jen, somehow my name came up. I guess they were talking about Only You, actually. And
oh, wow.
I know the woman who wrote it. So Claire invited me to do one. So I've done a couple of them now in France, last summer and the summer before. And it's just a really magical experience. I mean, you're in a 14th century castle in the first place.
Wow.
Yeah. And the food's incredible. And it's just, but the camaraderie of it. And I'm a mentor. There's 4 mentors, and we each have 4 mentees. And they're just people from all over the world. And it's kind of like camp in a way. Like you're in this bubble for a week all together, all your meals together, everything. And so you really get to know people well, and you get to know sort of their creative heart, right? Because they're working on their material, and for some of them, they haven't really shared it before, and even if they have, that's always challenging, right?
Right.
So, but it's really what she's created, I think, is quite extraordinary. And it really comes from the heart with her. You can tell, You know, she really wants people to thrive creatively and to make their work happen, you know, and to facilitate.
Yeah, no, that's so amazing. I think, you know, this whole thing that we've all gone through, it's like, how important are the arts, you know?
Oh my gosh.
Considered essential.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's so interesting. One of my mentees from last year in France is Australian. And we got to be really good friends. She's a really, really talented writer. She's actually a novelist, and now she's turned to screenwriting. Anyway, we've gotten to be good friends. And she sent me this thing yesterday or 2 days ago about how the Australian Prime Minister is now making it twice as expensive to get a degree in the humanities down there as it is for engineering or, you know, medicine or whatever in terms of loans and stuff. Now, I get that we need engineers and doctors and all that. We all get that. But come on, you know, it's a slap in the face to the humanities, to the arts, which are, as you say, more vital. And you would think people would be realizing that right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, no, I remember hearing this story. I don't know where I got it from, but like if a child was, you know, terminally ill, you know, and of course the doctor's there doing, you know, what they have to do, but what was that child's last wish was to see the movie Up, you know? So
Absolutely.
what's more, feeding the soul, you know, feeding, even de-stressing the body.
Right. It's mental health, and it's also what makes life worth living, right?
Yeah.
I actually, it just reminded me, years ago, this is how old I am. Do you know who Robert McKee is?
Who?
Robert McKee.
Oh yes, he's the guru. He does, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I had Robert McKee as a teacher in college.
Oh wow.
For photography. This is before he ever became what he's now become. So this is a very long time ago. And it was actually, I went to UC San Diego, but this was at San Diego State. I was taking a summer school class. It was just like a random thing. And he was my teacher. And he was Robert McKee. I don't know if you've ever seen him speak, but he was the same then. He's very and some people were really put off. Like some people did not like the class. But I really did. And I remember, and this is part of the reason I like the class, and this has stayed with me all this time. And I don't know if he does this in his seminars, because I've not been to those, but the very first day of class, he gave us this speech about a world without art. Like if you were to imagine a world without, where everything is simply utilitarian, right? And he said that was basically his idea of hell. And I thought, I never looked at it that way before. You know, that the role that it plays in so many ways in our lives. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's amazing to me how, you know, everything stopped and we're all, what kept us sane, you know, during, yeah.
I am going to do a free webinar. In a couple weeks. I forget the date, but anyway, it's going to be, I'm doing it in a couple weeks. It's going to be a free webinar of like a keynote that I give on structure, on script structure, because I think that's a lot of, you know, it's challenging for people. It's kind of deceptively difficult and yet really important. So I'm doing that, and then a live Q&A after that. And then anybody who, you know, signs up for that can get 20% off my course. Sorry about that. July 8th, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
I don't have the time yet, probably in the evening. It's an hour and a half. It's, you know, this presentation on structure, and then, like I said, live Q&A. So yeah, for whoever wants to, and it's free. It's totally free.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. That's really great that you're giving of your time in that way. And
well, you know, honestly, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you should do a lunch and this and that." It's like, no, I'm too lazy. It is a little pro bono. You know what I mean? It's just like, I have this content. I can't go anywhere and do it in person now. So let me just share it for whoever it might be helpful to.
Is your book related? It covers a lot of.
Yeah, the book kind of grew out of my teaching. it covers everything, but there's quite a bit of emphasis on structure, and I break down a bunch of movies in it, you know, some of my favorite movies, and I try to, you know, vary it from, you know, buddy picture, solo hero, ensemble, comedy, drama, whatever, you know. I'm thinking I probably should do some newer movies, you know. It's just hard to give them up, like, because they're so good. Like Tootsie is so good, and Thelma
Yeah.
is so good, and there's a few in there I could probably change out. It's really in an effort to, you know, kind of illustrate the points, right? Like, what is an inciting incident? How does it really work? What are the criteria? What makes it an inciting incident, right? Sometimes you think inciting incident is something the hero does. No, no, no. It's something that happens to them. It's the problem. It's the curveball the hero throws, right? So understanding those distinctions, I think, is important.
I love that distinction. Yeah. Yeah. That it's brought upon them, not, you know,
Exactly.
because of their background, you know.
And it's not just a random thing that happens, right? It's the thing that upends their life, that upends their status quo, that really
Makes them, pushes them to grow past their limitations.
And pushes them into action, right? You know, like everything was sort of the way it was, whether it was good or bad or indifferent, it was the status quo, and now it's flipped, and what are they going to do about it?
Have you ever considered directing?
Not seriously, no. I mean, of course I'd like the control. But do I want to deal with, you know, the studio and the unions and the budgets and be up at the crack of dawn and have all that pressure? No. You know, I mean, it's a whole other skill set, you know. I mean, I certainly understand why people want to do it, and I really admire people who do it, and I think I'm just daunted by it. And God knows, like I said, I would like control, because you don't have that as a screenwriter. You really don't.
Yeah.
That is one of the difficult things about it, right? Like if you're a painter or even a novelist, you know, you have your editor, but it's kind of your thing, and it's going straight from you to whoever is interested, right? You're buying
Right.
and maybe people
Mind to audience.
you know, but it's your vision, for better or worse, and that's just not how it works with screenwriting unless you are the director.
Yeah, and sometimes not even then, right?
Yeah, sometimes not then, but you know, certainly there's compromises and all that, but they have more control than anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now I ask because I usually ask everybody, you know, have you gotten any backlash? You're the first screenwriter I've been lucky enough to interview. The other women have been directors. So I usually ask, have you encountered any backlash or obstacles due to your gender?
No.
Again, if you...
I always answer this way. Listen, you know, a certain amount of that, I think, was inevitable. You know, we live in a sexist society. We live in a sexist culture, right? Having said that, I kind of just kept my head down. You know, I was just like, I was very driven, and Sydney, you know, I worked for some great people, right? Like Sydney was not an easy person to work for, but he was a good person, and he was a brilliant man, brilliant artist. And so